Welcome, Bob Burdikin here from New Wave Therapy. And before we start this episode, I want to welcome and thank all of the new subscribers to our YouTube channel, and I'm delighted to see such a great response to our latest project. Now, Dan and I will be discussing the use of food logs and how they're directly involved in the process of helping and determining the correct path for each client that works with Country Doctor Nutritional Center. So today's episode is number 12, and I do hope that you enjoy it. Welcome, Dan. How are things out in your neck of the woods today?
You know what, Bob? It couldn't be better. We're just having a great time serving others.
Okay. You got any wind?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, Wyoming, if we could capitalize on the wind, we'd all be millionaires, right?
That's right. You know, as I said in our last episode, this is the part of the week that I'm starting to look forward to more and more. And, you know, today we're not going to discuss any specific herbal-based nutritional product, but we're going to take a look at what I understand to be one of the most important aspects of your initial contact with a new client. And I do know that's the food log. Is that correct, Dan?
Yeah, it's one of the most valuable tools that we can provide. When used properly, it really empowers clients.
Okay, so let's dive right into it. What's the main purpose of food logs?
You know, many people aren't aware of diet because modern mainstream philosophy on health doesn't stress the importance of diet and how well we fuel the body as a factor in overall health and performance. They just don't stress it enough. Or people who have used food logs in the past were not used in a very positive way. It was more of a shaming, hey, don't do this kind of approach. And so we have found food logs to be the most empowering tool initially, and for the first 3 to 6 months even, for helping people become aware of what they're feeding the body, how they're feeding the body, how they're combining their food, how late they might be eating certain foods, and so on. It really gives us a snapshot weekly picture of the dietary habits, which, as you and I both know, is going to have the greatest impact on their overall performance and ability to restore function.
Well, have you found that people are open to doing them?
You know, it's interesting. You use the word open. Most are not, but it's, you know, part of our program. It's a requirement. It's just a requirement. Nobody does it perfectly, and we're not going to beat them up over having a Twinkie or a Mountain Dew. That's not what we use food logs for. We use them to identify what's missing. What's missing in a proper habit of daily eating? What's missing as far as nutrient, fruits and vegetable ratios to starches and proteins, and water consumption, things like that. So we're just looking at identifying and using them to empower a client so that they can actually get the sustainable health restoration that they're looking for.
Okay. So do you let your clients provide their own food logs, or do you have a form that you provide?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, we provide a form because we see 20 to 30 folks a day. Most of them are on food logs. They're turning them in. And if we allowed, and I know people have their apps that they like to use, you know, the fitness apps and the daily tracker apps and things of that nature. And I get it. They really like those.
Mm-hmm.
But because we have so much grading to do on a regular basis, we provide the form and one sheet of instructions on how to really fill them out properly and what I'm looking for that's going to turn around. I can give them feedback on so that they, you know, get empowered from this tool and get their health back. So we do provide all I tell them, here's the paper, you got to provide the ink, right? And fill them out. We'll check them next week. So
it sounds like they almost have to do homework.
Yeah, they're back in school for sure. I'm glad you used that word because they're definitely back in school. Adults, still eating like children. Cereal for breakfast and, you know, a hot dog for lunch and stuff like that. And those are habits that just have to be changed over time. They don't change overnight.
Right. So Dan, I'm wondering, how do you look at food logs in terms of content?
You know, unless we find specific food avoidances that the person needs to take care of, or if they're on a phase 1 food program because there's a little bit excess yeast activity in the gut, we're trying to bring that into balance, then we actually go by the 6211 food model that, Dr. Jensen shared with over 400,000 clients worldwide. That was his model from the Chemistry of Man. And so that's a pretty good sample size of people that utilize that, and with minor modifications depending on specific needs. But we look at 6 vegetables a day, 2 fruits, 1 starch, 1 meat protein, some seeds and nuts and eggs and other things can be a part of that. But we're really looking to make sure they're getting about an 80% ratio of nutrient-rich, preferably raw and organic type food sources to those that are more processed or a cooked meat of some kind. So about an 80 to 20% ratio, 80-20 rule.
Okay. I don't know if you noticed it, but I put up a little cartoon about the 6211 program.
I enjoyed that. It spelled it out. It spelled it out really, really well. In just 2 minutes, there's amazing the wealth of information that you can get in a 2-minute video like what you produced.
Oh, yeah.
I certainly went on and viewed it and enjoyed it. It captured a lot of value. And I'm one of these people that I think there's strength in simplicity. And the simpler we can keep it with proven resources that perform and get these into the people's hands, then they have to take action. They have to be consistent. Again, not perfect, but be consistent with applying those resources.
Yeah, I'm going to take some of this information today and do another one of those only on food logs this time.
Perfect. That's
So
excellent.
how long do you have your clients back in class and turning in their food logs?
Well, initially, we look at it during the trial period, that first 4 to 6 weeks, to see how well they do with turning them in. Okay. But I've had people that have had to be on food logs the 3 to 6 months at one time. I know a practitioner in Florida who kept her food logs for 2 years, when she first started her practice, so that she could produce her food logs to her clients that were kind of resistant to doing food logs. And I don't want to do that. And well, what do you eat, doc? And stuff like that, which we get that all the time.
Yeah.
And I like being able to produce food logs and saying, this is basically my diet right here. And I can show you on paper. So sometimes it's just a few, 4 to 6 weeks. In most cases, it's can be up to several months because we've got to get the new habit locked in. And if they're not improving, then we got to keep doing it until we see a large enough improvement over time with their dietary habit before we start backing off on food logs.
Okay. So what are some of the wins that people have shared with you after doing their food logs for a while?
Interestingly enough, I've had people come in their very first week having better bowel movements, better energy, better sleep, less gas, bloating, nausea, heartburn, less aches and pains, and have already lost a pound or 2. So it's amazing when their awareness with empowerment, right? They can be aware of the need to do something, but if they're not empowered to do it, you got to get the two connected. And with the awareness and the empowerment that food logs will give a client if they're used properly, it's amazing how fast their body will start responding and improving to the protocol.
Okay. So is that something that, sure, it's like, you got to change a habit. You got to create a new habit, a good habit. Do they really resist you on that? Or does it really take a little bit of pounding in the head or whatever?
Everybody has their level of struggle that they're willing to put up with and tolerate. Some people, if I can just get them to change their food, their food intake by as little as 5%. And what I mean by that is we have to find a level of improvement, whatever gradient that might be, whatever that looks like. We have to establish them that they can do it consistently. People that try, shoot to the moon day one, well, that's not sustainable if they have a lot of things that they need to change. So we have to find a level of improvement that they can get on a trajectory and then support them through that long enough. So a 5% improvement a week, a week over week, to go from 50-50, which I've seen most food logs that I see when they first turn them in, 50% of what people are consuming is processed, rapidly metabolizing sugars and carbohydrates. The other 50% might have some nutritional value to it. And the goal is to go from 50-50 to 80-20. Well, I got to figure out a way to get them there. And if it's a 5% increment of improvement per week, that's going to take them what? Minimum of 6 weeks at 5% improvement to go from 50-50 to 80-20, minimum of 6 weeks. And, they're only eating one vegetable a week, and I'm trying to get them to 6 vegetables a day. That's going to take us a while to get that established.
Well, I've got a son-in-law that sees anything green and runs out of the room. Okay. So,
yeah.
hey,
Well, and his performance, right?
right.
His
Exactly.
metabolism and his body performance and these other factors probably show that.
Exactly. They do. Yes. So let's do a hypothetical here. Okay. Have you got a
Okay.
form there that you use of your food log?
Yes, I do.
Let's take that form. And so we've got a hypothetical, a client. Let's call her Susie. Okay.
Okay.
How would you tell Susie she needs to be on the food logs, and how would you explain to her to fill them out?
That would be this sheet right here.
Okay.
Yep. Food log guidelines. Very simple. Write down the type of food that you eat at each meal.
Yeah.
Recording everything that passes over the lips.
Okay.
Down. So it can be snacks. It can be just, I'm walking through the kitchen, grabbing some crackers. Be specific. Try to include sauces and gravies and condiments with the brand name, and the reason I ask for brand name, especially on ketchups and things of that nature,
Oh, yeah.
is there's plenty of suitable substitutes that are satisfying, they taste good, and they're much more nutritious than just getting, the normal name brand ketchup out there.
Okay.
Every little morsel that's eaten, everything they drink, handful of Oreos or, some nuts, and make sure, this is one of the things that's really important. I try to establish with them the guideline for this to work really well is to write it down the moment you eat something. So I have people, I say, look, if this thing is folded up and crinkled and all messed up, I don't care, because then I know you've been carrying it with you. And when you eat something, you write it down, you log it. Then I know I'm getting the chances are I'm getting a much more accurate food log if I can get them to do it right away. Be as specific as they can instead of just saying, bread, I want to know if it's wheat bread. If it's mayonnaise, I want to know what brand. If there's, cheese or onion rings, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And the last thing on there is to really tell the truth. Just be honest, because we don't use food logs to punish you or shame you in any way. We're using food logs to make you aware and to empower and bring the two together over time. And that's how that new established habit takes place. And that's how people's health gets restored.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, they don't tell you the truth. They only hurting themselves.
And the gals up front, they really tell them that when they go through this, they tell them that, it's like, hey, the only person you're going to hurt by following this program, or not following it, I should say, and being upfront on your food log is you.
Yeah. Yeah. You talked about the apps before, but it really takes a commitment to pick up a pen and write on a piece of paper. Then you're actually making a commitment. It's so much more. It's like using a cell phone to do your appointments, or to have a book to write it down in. It's the same thing. So
yeah, I've had people come in that, again, this is one of those areas that can be a bit challenging to get started. But if I'm at week 3 or 4,
yeah,
standing joke in the clinic with clients, we just tell them right up front. But the standing joke is, well, if you miss a day of turning in your food logs, that's called strike 1. And if you miss 2 weeks, excuse me, not a day, but if you miss 2 weeks of turning them in, well, that's strike 2. And they're already getting the picture. So what happens if I get to strike 3? Well, by week 3 of not turning in food logs that I can help you with, the chances are that we're going to have a reevaluation of your commitment to this program being a great match for you or not.
Right.
Because I have to know what the food awareness is, and they have to know. To be aware and to be empowered, they have to write it down.
Well, you've got to have the information to work with. You can't just look at them and say, okay, this is your problem. You got to say,
Right.
You got to look at every aspect of what you're doing
Yeah.
because we've got to change that.
Yeah. It's critically important. A lot of times people were misguided with food logs in the past. Well, they will, count your calories and going to different meetings and turning them in. And it's a little embarrassing with a group, it's just, they weren't used properly. When this is an amazing, amazing tool. And when it's used properly, it's no different than, revisiting your history as one of the top farriers in the nation for 35 plus years. A great rasp in the hands of an artisan, you get great work done. But the tool in the hands of a rookie, he takes the hide off of his knuckles and doesn't get the hoof level, right? I mean,
Right.
So it's the same tool, but it's the execution and the support in using that tool. And that's what really, really makes a difference.
Okay. Dan, every time that we get together, I get the feeling that it's like you're peeling back a layer of an onion, layer by layer, to get to the internal point. And that internal point, that's the answer to your client's main problem. And I'm sure that many people who are watching would agree with that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We, over time, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, we have built stress upon stress upon stress, layer upon layer, until we feel like we're drowning in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we start peeling away the gentle layers, and the whole time, the client starts seeing an improvement in how they feel and perform. They get excited, and that makes the journey easier. It's less of a struggle, and it really reaffirms their commitment to why they're doing this. When they start seeing results in the first week or two on how they're feeling, then they're willing to use those tools and continue on.
Okay. I totally agree with that. I see the same thing when I go out and do light therapy with horses. I've seen so much change in a horse over a period of time because, again, I'm peeling off a layer. I'm finding a new problem, taking care of that problem, and so on. And, some of these horses, it took me 2 years with one horse that was a PTSD horse to get him to where we could touch his face, without him trying to strike out at us. So, but, hanging in there, in essence, I had to do a similar situation of feedback from the owner, much like food logs. Like, what are we feeding him? Again, nutrition,
Yes.
The horse feed out there today is garbage, just like people food. Okay.
Yep. And from that stem the majority of our problems.
Exactly. It's probably about time we better start buttoning up. So I want the people to continue to like, share, and subscribe, as well as give us that thumbs up and hit the notification bell to be able to be notified of the new podcasts. And that, along with hitting the like button, these are all the actions that have shown us that people have gotten a great amount of value out of this series. And lastly, I'd also like to thank you for your responses, the viewers out there, and would like to encourage any of them that have any questions for Dan or myself to please send them in by placing them in the comment section below, and we'll do our very best to get you the answers that you're seeking. So until next week, when Dan and I will bring you a lot more of the best kept secrets and supplements. So be safe and be healthy.